Hello. Mhm. Sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm repeating. I'm Zulfiquar Mirani, the moderator of today's event. It is meet the crew or the team who has make the Still Standing movie. That is a documentary movie that is about Sindhi people and Sindhi culture, Sindhi civilization, and the sufferings and successes of the Sindhi people are all around the world, especially after the partition of India and Pakistan. People have immigrated to different worlds, so different countries, and the Still Standing team. They have traveled about 7 countries to meet such people, and they hunt for such people. And Pinch Media is the group basically that is making this movie. So first of all, I appreciate Pinch Media for the bold step to uh, make such a movie on Sindhi community. Basically, Pinch Media is a group that is co-partnered by the 3 persons, uh, Mirko Pincelli from Italy, and the other 2 partners from the UK and one from the Hong Kong. So first, I introduce a little bit about the Still Standing movie. For this movie, they have traveled about 7 countries, as I have told, and met about 128 people and interviewed about 180, uh, 28 people around the world. And they recorded their very interesting stories about of their successes and about the sufferings. Uh, so uh, the people who have traveled, we call them a crew, is the Daniel so, Salter, who is the cinematographer, and Jason is editing this movie right now, and the Mirko Pincelli, who is the main person behind all this movie. He is Mirko Pincelli is the director and cinematographer of the movie also, and uh, Mirko Pincelli is from the Italy. He has made a lot of movies, several movies, documentary and feature film as well, and he has got his movie has got a lot of awards as well. So today we'll introduce him to you, and he will talk about his experiences during shooting, pre-shooting, and post-shooting phases of the movie. And Daniel also, he has been accompanied with him. So uh, this is all about the meeting the crew of the movie. So for the viewers who does not who don't know the Sindhi basically, who don't know the English, I will introduce a little bit about this movie and the characters in Sindhi. So सभ खां पहिरियों मां पंहिंजे सिंधी दोस्तनि खे हिन में ख़ुशि आमदीद चवां थो, भलीकार चवां थो ऐं नमस्कार चवां थो, जेके इंडिया, दुबई, स्पेन ऐं ॿियनि मुल्कनि मां असां सां जॉइन कनि पिया। ही प्रोग्राम असां ख़ासि तौर ते रिथियो आहे जेको क्रू आहे स्टिल स्टैंडिंग टीम, स्टिल स्टैंडिंग मूवी ठाहिण जे लाइ जेको टीम हुई असांजी, उनखे जेको उन्हनि सां मिलाइण जे लाइ, उन जा एक्सपीरियंसिस शेयर करण जे लाइ स्टिल स्टैंडिंग मूवी आहे जेका सिंध जी सकाफ़त, सिंधी माण्हुनि, सिंधियुनि जी कल्चर, सिंध जी जेके तहज़ीब आहे उनखे उजागर करण जे लाइ, सिंधी माण्हुनि सां मिलण जे लाइ, ऐं जिन सफ़र कयो आहे, जिन पंहिंजूं कामयाबी माणियूं आहिनि, उन्हनि खां इंटरव्यू जे बारे में ऐं ज़बरदस्त जेको आहे सो इन टीम कमु कयो आहे। मां हुनखे तमामु घणो साराईंदुसि ऐं हिननि तमामु वॾो बोल्ड स्टेप वरितो आहे सिंधी कम्यूनिटी जे हवाले सां, ख़ासि करे जेका सुप्रेस कम्यूनिटी रही आहे हुई, ऐं उन खां पोइ हू पंहिंजो जदोजहद में आहिनि ऐं पंहिंजो मुस्तक़िल जेको आहे सो जदोजहद करे मुख़्तलिफ़ कामयाबी बि आणनि पिया। उन्हनि मुख़्तलिफ़ जेको आहे सो भोॻिया बि आहिनि जेको आहे सो मुख़्तलिफ़ शयूं। सो उन्हनि खे पहुता आहिनि। वॾी ॻाल्हि इहा आहे त हीअ हर मुल्क में विया आहिनि, उन ताईं पहुता आहिनि, उन्हनि खां इंटरव्यू वरिता अथऊं। सो ही बेसिकली आहे स्टोरीज़ जेके उन्हनि माण्हुनि पाण ॿुधायूं आहिनि पंहिंजे हवाले सां, उन्हनि ते मुश्तमिल आहे ऐं तमामु घणो जसल आहे हीअ टीम। ऐं मां घणो वक़्तु न वठंदुसि हिन टीम में, मीरको पेंचेली आहे जेको इटली जो असांजो डायरेक्टर आहे हिन टीम हुन जो उन तमामु घणियूं मूवी ठाहियूं आहिनि डॉक्यूमेंट्री फीचर फिल्म्स ऐं तमामु उनजे हिकु मूवी तमामु घणा अवॉर्ड बि हासिल कया आहिनि इंटरनेशनल अवॉर्ड उन सां गॾु हुयो डैनियल साटर ऐं जोसेफ बि हुयो गॾु जेको मुख़्तलिफ़ मुल्क में हिन सां गॾु हुननि रिसर्च कई माण्हुनि ताईं पहुता हिन वक़्तु जेसन ब्रुक्स आहे जेको यूके जो आहे बेसिकली उहो हिनखे एडिट करे पियो ऐं होपफुली महीने ॾेढ जे अंदरि इहा मूवी सभिनी जे साम्हूं अची वेंदी सो असां हिननि सभिनी खां मुख़्तलिफ़ ॻाल्हियूं पुछंदासीं हुननि जा एक्सपीरियंसिस उन्हनि खे चवंदासीं शेयर कनि असां सां सो इन ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन सां मां चवंदुमि त हाणे असां पंहिंजे गेस्ट ॾे वञूं मिर्को पेंचेली डैनियल ऐं जेसन जेके असां सां गॾु हिन में पार्टिसिपेट कनि पिया इवेंट में उन्हनि सां गॾु असां वञूं ऐं उन्हनि सां मुख़्तलिफ़ स्टोरीज़ ऐं उन्हनि जूं ॻाल्हियूं ॿुधूं तमामु यकीनन इंट्रस्टिंग स्टोरीज़ हूंदियूं इंट्रस्टिंग ॻाल्हियूं हूंदियूं ऐं ख़ासि करे तव्हांखे जेकॾहिं इंग्लिश न बि अचे थी मीरको डैनियल जूं ॻाल्हियूं ॿुधी करे तव्हां फील कंदा उन्हनि जो जेको आहे फीलिंग्स इंग्लिश न अचण जे बावजूद बि तव्हां यकीनन उन्हनि जो जेको आहे महसूस थींदा थैंक यू वेरी मच महिरबानी तव्हांजी सो विल स्विच टू इंग्लिश अगेन especially first of all I will ask Mirko to tell about the how they conceived the idea of this movie.
First of all, hello to everybody. It's good to see you again, Zulfiquar, after what is it, 2 years now. So it's great to see you, and thank you for hosting this session. Just a quick word for everybody else who is behind this conversation today, and everybody else who is involved in the team. As you mentioned, Joseph was with us during the production, so Joseph came with us to do the sound and do photography on set in Sindh and all around the world. Then there is Suhai and Andrea who are helping us a lot during the whole process of from the translation to social medias, and of course also everybody who supported us to do the journey, including people in Sindh and people in India. The question you started from, how the idea came from and where it came from, I think is a very interesting, is a very interesting part of what Still Standing is, because to be 100% honest, I studied history at school. I studied Latin, I studied Greek, I studied again history for 5-6 years, but I never heard of Sindhi before 2017. In 2017, I was giving some classes at the London Film Academy, and one of the students who was, I would say, different from everybody else, so was in a very far corner. He would most of the time observe and listen, but not share too much of what was going through his head. He is and was a Sindhi. So during the breaks, he was the one who introduced me to Sindhis. At the beginning, I really didn't know how to relate to the whole story and to the whole history that Sindhi are holding, because as you know, and as everybody who is listening knows more than me, the history of Sindhi goes back way before Egyptian, way before Romans, way before the history that we are taught at school. So again, history has been taught from a certain years on. Everything that happened before, including the history, which are dated probably around 5000 BC up to 8000 BC, is a part of history I knew very little. And with him, and especially him, had the dream to make a film for the Sindhi community, and especially for his kids, for his nephews, for his family, that would be the first ever film that would tell a very broad and honest story about who the Sindhi have been, what the Sindhi went through, and what the Sindhi are facing today. And again, by being honest, my first reaction was, this sounds too complicated. I know nothing about it, and how do I approach something like this? I had another documentary, I had a fiction film I was developing with my partner at Pinch Media, so it was really, I had enough work going on, and it felt as a too complicated film to step into. But again, as I guess every person who loves this world and who is interested in history, I went back home and did some research, and I discovered that first of all, there was not a single documentary or a single film that would tell in an honest way who the Sindhi community is and what the Sindhi community went through. Plus, I find it, for me as a filmmaker, as a film director, I find it very interesting because everything had to be discovered. So it made me feel very much as the time I was researching for one of my first films in Bosnia, which was trying to tell the story of the contemporary situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, who is a country divided between Muslim, Orthodox and Catholic people, which, you know, they had one of the worst, if not the worst, genocide since Second World War. And wherever I would look back then in Bosnia, I would find a story. I would find something interesting, and I would find something untold. And by researching about Sindhis, I had a very similar feeling. So whoever I came across, whoever I started to speak with, I felt that they were unloading an enormous amount of feeling, emotions, and forgotten stories that they were kept under the carpet or kept in their bookshelf, but they were not told, not just to a broad audience, but not even within their families. Because again, as you mentioned during your introduction, one of the most, I would say, key moments for the Sindhis has been the partition of India in 1947, when all of a sudden, and we can say that it did happen all of a sudden, Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, was created, and the state of India as an independent state was created. So Sindhis, by being and by living along this beautiful river that crossed Pakistan, they suddenly had to move across countries. So you had over 1 million people having to go on the other side of the border, and Sindh at the same time witnessed between 5 to 7 million people coming from India into Sindh. So again, every single person who went through this odyssey is obviously loaded with emotion, loaded with stories, and loaded with things that probably the majority of the audience never heard, me included. So this is very much how all began. And again, I'm extremely happy and proud to say that one student that was in the class is still probably one of the main supporters as an executive producer for this project, together with the Chalaram Foundation, which is based in Hong Kong, UK, and India. So, you know, it has been a beautiful journey with up and downs, like every film has. But again, by being here with you, we met you the first time in Sindh, and you welcomed us, you took us around, and you reshaped completely our idea of what Sindh and what Pakistan was. Because again, let's be honest, we come from a Western world. We come from a world that we can read, we can get informed, we can follow the news as much as we want, but we get a certain kind of information which has been filtrated and is being presented to us in a way that the mass media want to present it to us. So I must say that the feeling I had before leaving for Sindh and for Pakistan, and the feeling I have now about Sindh and Pakistan, is something completely different. I don't want to go over too much. And, you know, Daniel has witnessed with me the whole journey. Jason has been the one who had to go through all of these stories and had to make choices together with us. But essentially, this is how the idea came to us and how we developed the film until today.
So this very interesting, very, very interesting. And now I'd ask Daniel how he embarked on this journey, in fact. You unmute your sound, please.
Apologies, I'll start again. Hello, everyone. Mirko summed it up in a very, very good way. I was brought up in the UK and studied history. At no point in any lesson did I ever learn of anything to do with partition. And it kind of felt that it was just hidden away. So when Mirko brought me on board to do this project, again, I jumped into the research and started to read up. But my true experience was when we started. That was when I started to meet the Sindhis and actually understand the British have a checkered past, and it's not something that we openly teach people about. And the more I've actually learned, and the more people that I've met on this journey, the more I appreciate a lot more, not just particularly to the Sindhis, but to all forms of life. I think everybody needs to take on a little bit of Sufism in what they do, and maybe they'll be, a little bit better in the world. So yeah, my journey started because thanks to Mirko, I got brought on board to do this.
That's very nice. I will will tell you a little about their journey. They've traveled about 7 countries. So they started from the Spain, from where they've got the inspiration of one notable person, Rajesh Rajwani. He belongs to the Canary Island. And, they visited to his family. And let me tell you, there are about 35,000 Indians living in the Spain right now. Most of them are the Sindhis. And especially in Canary Islands and the surrounding, there are about 10,000 Sindhis living over there. So very much active in their economy and in different fields. So they've searched for them, went there, and then for this movie, they've got their interviews. One of them is Thakri Devi. She has experience basically. She was a child when the partition happened, so she will tell naturally very interesting stories about the partition and what happened thereafter. So it's Mirko and Joseph and their third partner, in fact, who is not because of some reasons over today with us. But one day we maybe make him online with you and introduce with you and share his experiences as well. So then they went to the Dubai and India and Hong Kong, and finally they came to Sindh. We'll find later on in this program. We'll ask the Mirko how did he come to Sindh. But it is interesting first to ask about him, about his experience in the Canary Islands, meeting with the Sindhis and with the other people whom we met over there, and what were their ideas about the Sindhis and so on.
Before you do, because we can actually see the live comments coming up on the screen. Raz, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but we have so many good memories of Sindhi to answer it straight away. You're going to need to wait to the end, and we'll be happy to answer you. No problem at all. Lots of good memories of Sindh. Sorry, Mirko.
Naturally, I know you have been very friendly. You have been mixing up with the many Sindhi people, with the common people. Yes, Daniel is a very lively person.
Thank you.
So, Daniel, please share your experience with the Canary Island, because many people in Sindh don't know about the Canary Island, and there's a lot of Sindhi people who are living there. You have explored those Sindhi people who are there. Thank you for that.
Sure. So when we first arrived in Tenerife, I've been there as a tourist myself before. Again, I had no idea that this community existed. If it wasn't for Rakesh introducing us to everybody, I wouldn't have known about it. So partly my ignorance, but once we actually arrived, very, very welcoming, and it's kind of something that has been solid throughout. Whenever you enter a Sindhi home, you're treated almost like a god. I think a couple of people even turned around to us and said, you never know if someone enters your house, whether it's God in disguise. So everybody's treated evenly, equally, and fairly. So everybody's been very, very welcoming, and I've had so many good dinners and so many good food. So it's been
so
fantastic.
So you got pakoda and papad as well over there?
For sure.
Traditional Sindhi dish, yeah. Pakoda and papad. Okay.
But what was actually really good was when we were invited to, I don't know how to describe it, but it was a Sindhi social club, a gathering. They had a very, very nice kind of area where, if I remember, you went down the steps just outside this hotel, and all of a sudden it opened up, and it was a community place where everyone could come. They were all welcome to it, and they were kind enough to actually let us show a kind of a dummy trailer of our journey when we did our research. We went, I think it was June 2018.
17.
17. Oh, okay. 17.
And how would you tell your experiences, and how did you find them? And naturally, it is Rajesh Rajwari who had introduced to you. And what were your feelings what you met the Sindhi people over there?
I will tell you, but I really want to hear what Daniel was going for inside this club, because it was a quite unique experience. So Daniel, please just finish on that.
So we arrived, and in true, in our fashion, you have to adapt with every moment. So we arrive, and there was, I'm going to guess, about 30 people, all, retired Sindhis, just living their life in Tenerife. So we're sitting down, and I think we interrupted their bingo game, and everyone's sitting scratching their heads like, what are these three white guys doing? What's all the cameras? What's all of this? And then Mirko got up and we did like a speech, and they introduced us, and we played them the trailer from our research trip. And you could almost see them fighting each other. Like there were about 4 or 5 guys who they were speaking in pure Sindhi. So I have no idea what it was. I just guessed the conversation that was happening. But they were kind of fighting like, I remember that. No, that's not how it happened. This is how it happened. And you just have this huge, like, it wasn't even an argument, but when they were trying to explain to us their own experiences, they're all crawling over each other. No, you shush. I'm going to tell my side of the story. No, you shush. I'm going to tell my side. So this kind of went on for, I don't know, half an hour or an hour, but it was really, really nice to see all these people who were placid. I mean, it's a polite way of saying that they were just sitting around waiting for their bingo to count. So they were really quiet, just sitting around, to becoming boisterous and monstrous, and they're all just turning around and everyone's having a good communication with one another. And then they showed us the temple area, and yeah, it was really, really nice. We were very welcomed. That was a good experience the first time.
To follow up on what you asked, Zulfiquar, I think that also, and to reconnect to what Daniel just said, I think that to me, it very much felt like if these people, in a positive way, they've been asleep from 1947 until now, and suddenly you reoffer them a version of their own history seen by our own eyes as outsider. And the whole argument was, are we doing it in the correct way or not? Because as you know, history can be told in so many ways, depending if you witness the history on one side or another, you have a completely different feeling. And there is no right or wrong, both feeling are honest feeling. In fact, you as a human went through those experiences. But that's what we created. We created the argument and the confrontation between them as, are they telling our history in a correct way or not? Is it worth the danger that some people from the outside step into our world to tell our own history or not? And eventually, again, I think we ended up all agreeing that is it better not to try to make a film that tries to be as honest as possible, and you don't do it. And that's really what you have to deal when you try to make a film of this kind, whatever the topic is. Going back to the feeling of being in Canary Island at first, I think we've been very, very lucky to have people that not just welcome us, but made us feel, at home, as Daniel said, but they were our first teachers in a way. They were the first people to give us information on information that we needed before we arrived in Sindh. So the whole goal was to arrive in Sindh at the moment that we felt to be ready to go in Sindh. Because again, to tell a history, you need to have at least some basic knowledge of what you're talking about. So the plan was to travel to all the country where Sindhi migrated as diaspora through the years. So we went to Dubai, we went to Canary Island, we went to Dubai, we went to Hong Kong, we went to India to then arrive in Sindh, hoping that we would have an understanding of what the best honest version of the story would have been. And I think that worked in a very well way, at least for my point of view.
That's nice. What was the feeling of you made over there with the people of other communities and other religions as well, like the father of the church and the counselors and different people who were there? So what were there about their feelings about the Sindhi community over there? They are peaceful, they are friendly, humble, or how are they?
Well, in true Sindhi style, there was it was Father Daniele that you're mentioning, and fully supportive of the community. I mean, in true Sindhi style, whenever you guys go into a different environment, you don't force anybody to take on your point of view or your ways. It was something that the Sindhis actually helped them to fund the new constructions and supported the community. So completely open between two. It didn't even matter religion, if I'm honest. It was just, we live here as Sindhis, so we're going to do the best for our community.
So, Mirko, what are their feelings about the Sindh, the motherland of their ancestors?
Their feeling or my feeling? Their feeling.
Their feelings.
You have different type of feeling, but overall you can summarize into different group of people. You can summarize on those people who they are born in Sindh, so they were probably kids, very young age, 5, 6, 10, some of them 12 or 14. I think we met 2 partition survivors who they were 14 and 15 during partition, so their memories are very vivid. And these people, they are obviously they are much more attached to Sindh, and they have the feeling of, they have the wish to be able to go sooner or later to visit Sindh. Of course, due to political reason, it's not exactly the easiest things for anybody outside Pakistan to go and visit Pakistan, but things are changing, and I hope that, you know, with the time passing, they will have more chances to go back and see what Sindh is today. Because again, the image that most people have about Sindh is not exactly what Sindh is. That's why I always mention, I always tell to everybody, when I say everybody, I mean Sindhis, that they should really go. They should really put the effort to try and go and visit what Sindh is today. And Sindh, if I can add to this, I really feel that needs them. Meaning what most of these people have managed to achieve around the world, because of course they had to adapt, of course they had to integrate themselves, they had to learn new languages, they had to start new businesses, they had to develop, you know, to build new houses, to provide for their own families. What they have achieved is fairly important and could be very, very useful for the community itself. In terms of religion, I want to mention something that Jason came up by himself during one of the first days of the edit, which really impressed me, and I was really touched and happy to hear. As Daniel said, you know, if you come from Sindh, you can be of multiple religion. You can be Muslim, you can be Hindu, you can be Sikh, you can be Buddhist, but above all of these different approach to what religion is, they are related to Sufism. And what Jason, by himself, by watching the first few hours of footage, mentioned is, but this film is about Sufism. And to me, that really meant something, because again, it deconstructs this idea that we have. You know, I was really worried, you know, how many millions Muslim are within the Sindhi, how many million Hindu, how many million Sikh, how many million this and that. But it doesn't really matter as far as you understand who the Sindhi are and where the Sindhi are coming from. I don't know, Jason, if you want to add something into about this from your...
Please. Yeah, Jason's views. Yeah, please.
Sure. Well, I mean, yeah, it's great to be here. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think that was something that kind of comes out. I mean, it relates, if I rewind a little bit, to what I see as my role coming in, you know, relatively late in the story of the film Still Standing. I hear from Mirko, been working on this film, be great if we could talk about you editing it. And we've worked on documentaries in the past, and there's always this case of the editor being the kind of first audience member of watching this huge extended cut of not every single thing that was filmed, but the vast majority of it, and trying to read between the lines, you know. So I had obviously lots of conversations with Mirko about the themes that he felt that the film was engaging and the moments that he felt were the most important, but they were all already situated within a lot of background knowledge that he had, and like, yeah, both Daniel and Mirko mentioned, I didn't have a huge understanding or awareness of Sindh and the Sindhi kind of history before starting this project, so I was also trying to learn as I went through viewing. And yeah, as Mirko said, this concept of Sufism, whether it was used directly or just subconsciously brought to the table by the subjects of the documentary, it came through again and again, and felt like something quite fundamentally Sindhi that should be centrally situated in the story. And then it's just a question of making that story as accessible as possible. and by historically contextualizing the stories, the personal lived stories of people, Cindy's now in the modern world.
Thank you very much. So, the specialty of Sindh is the Sufism, toleration, religious toleration, the peaceful people. That I'll ask later when whether you find them in Sindh or not about with the Mirko and Daniel. But I'll talk about your journey to the Dubai now, where you have met the intellectual people over there, the very successful businessmen. And so, what about Dubai? When you travel to Dubai and you have met over there with the Sindhi people, how do you find them, Mirko? And then Daniel.
I rather had Daniel to answer to this, but I guess that's part of what I have to go through. So imagine coming from the most welcoming country, home, people with the most delicious food and the most available people to help you to do anything that you want, Canary Island. Suddenly we land in Dubai and all of our equipment is not just being confiscated, but we couldn't actually step out of our own hotel to film anything, anyone and anywhere. So suddenly we had a week or 10 days ahead. We had interviews planned. We had shots around the city that we planned. We had our shot list with different characters to go around. But it took us 3 days to be able to get our equipment back from the department at the airport that decided to confiscate all of the gear, including our drone and including all the cameras and so on. And then we were limited to be able to do interviews within the private property of the few people that we selected. So in terms of production, we were limited by the restriction that this country has. In terms of the people we met, again, I would say was very much in line with the people we met in Canary Island and in Hong Kong. You know, you have people that they tried their best to settle in a new country. Some of them became some of the most, successful business people within the Sindhi community ever, as Vasu Shroff, as Ram Baksani, as Arsha Chand, who she does incredible work in relationship to the language. She tried to preserve the language. She tried to teach to kids and young people the language. So the people we met, they were of outstanding level as they were in Canary Island, and they were as keen and as willing to help us as in Canary Island and in Hong Kong. But yes, we had to go through this limitation that the country has. And, I'm sure there is specific reason that this has to be in place, but you can imagine as lovers, camera lovers, and as people that we love to film beautiful places and beautiful people and beautiful street and color and sound, we suddenly had to reassess and reconsider all the plan that we scheduled beforehand.
So there you participated in the show as well, and had the Sindhi music, Shazia Kushk and others. So how did you find the Sindhi music at that point? I think it was first time, I think.
I was not there because I had to fly to Hong Kong to make sure that our next stretch of the shoot.
Daniel was there.
That's actually probably a better part of the story to tell, Mirko, is how did we actually enter Pakistan. I think that's probably before we move on, because I don't think a lot of people realize how much effort you have to put in. And when you're actually making a film, you have to have sacrifice, you have to have devotion. And we had, I can't remember exactly when it was, but before we got to Pakistan, each one of us had to apply for a visa. We went for interviews, we went for every possible interview in London to get this visa application done. And this was, not 1 or 2 weeks before.
Sorry, it's interesting that Britishers also need difficulty. They face difficulty to get the visa of Pakistan because at some moment of the history they were masters of the subcontinent. Okay, please continue.
Not anymore, but we, as I said, we went all through the interview process, and this was months before we even had flights or anything to get into Pakistan. And so after doing Tenerife and after going to Hong Kong, we got to Dubai, and we still didn't have our visa application. We still hadn't had approval. So ultimately, I think we were 3 or 4 days before we were supposed to arrive in Pakistan. And fortunately, due to someone in Hong Kong, we were able to fly Mirko back to Hong Kong with all of our passports, just to meet with this guy who gave us our visas and stamp our passport. He then took a flight back to Dubai. We met him at the airport and then jump on the plane to go to Pakistan. I mean, it was.
What was your first feelings when you heard of the Sindhi music over there in the function, live function? You heard the Shazia Kush, and
she was a really nice lady. Unfortunately, I didn't get too much time to listen to too much music. When you're filming, you're kind of you're not in one place. You're all over the place. But what was really interesting for me is I had no idea who this woman was. I was just told, okay, she's important, go film her. So I went outside after her set, and just around the corner, there's like hundreds of people in the hallway, all pestering her for pictures, for selfies. And it's like, oh, wow, okay. She must be very important. So it was like, I still need to interview you, ma'am. Can I have 5 minutes? Can I have 5 minutes? And I still didn't. To this day, I still didn't manage to interview her. And I think all the way through Pakistan, we were trying to arrange a time and a place to meet up. But for one reason or another, we weren't able to. We were a beautiful woman, really, really nice.
We were limited time, so we have to talk a lot about your experiences in India and then in Sindh also. So, Mirko, after you arrive in India, what were their feelings? Because the people who are living in Dubai and different countries, they might have different feeling than the people who are living in India.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, India, I would say, you're getting closer and closer to the place and the topic and the core of what your film and your story is about. So India is a country which is neighboring and has, a border. It's just there. It was one country before partition. So people who still decided to live and have businesses in India, probably they have, due to the geographical situation of where they're settled, more connection to Sindh. By the same time, you had, for people who they miss the feeling of being Sindhi and being in Sindh, you had this very strange feeling of knowing that Pakistan and Sindh was just there across the border, but they had as much struggle to cross this border as anybody else coming around the world. So yes, it's close, but it's actually as far. And India for me was I would call it almost a training to be ready to go and step into Sindh, because I understood the tradition of the community more and more as we were getting closer. We had a beautiful time in India. We met, again, I mean, during the whole journey, I think every single person we met, and until yesterday or a few days ago, while we were editing with Jason, we were choosing which character, which story, which scene. So we had these 128 characters that we met and interviewed on the wall, and we would just select who goes where and who do you give up from. And it's really hard, because Jason can tell you after, it's hard to give up from certain people for somebody else. And that's, I think, is one of the most interesting topic and issues of how you make a film, because if you are not in the film, it doesn't always mean that you don't like him. It means that the film is that long and you can't do miracle. But in a way, India was wonderful, because we had the chance to go to Gandhidham, which is closer to the border with Sindh and Pakistan. And in Gandhidham, we met some incredible people that they created probably the only Sindhi museum in Gandhidham. And they felt extremely connected. You can imagine that over there, 50 kilometers of desert, and then you have the border with Sindh. So back in time, you would have villagers who, they are all, they are Muslim, they are Hindu, they are Buddhist, they are mixed again within this community and small villages in the desert. They were used to go with their camels and cross the border back and forth within a day. And now, of course, all of this is not possible anymore. So again, I would say that as emotions, I build up the wish to reach Sindh more and more as I was spending those four weeks in India. Yes.
So we'll now come to the Sindh, the mainland, whether your expectation, what you heard about Sindh and Sindhi people in Canary and in Dubai and in India. When you met in the land in the Sindh, on the land of Sindh, and met the Sindhi people. So what were your feelings about whether you found them, what you heard about them, like Sufi people, like peaceful people, like lively people and welcoming, or what? So I'll ask Mirko, oh sorry, Daniel, and then naturally we'll spend some time about the Jason because he's working hard on the editing. So we have limited time, so we have. That's why we are coming to the Sindh mainland.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be brutally honest with everybody. I guess it's all to do with what Mirko was saying about having the filtration of information from our own countries and whatnot. I have to admit, when I got on the plane to Pakistan, it's the first time I've ever been concerned or scared about arriving in a country which I know nothing about apart from what I've been told or seen in the news. So on arrival, once I stepped off the plane, it's like, is this what everybody's been discussing and telling me about, all of these different things? And from that moment on, any tensions that I ever had or any build up expectations was completely gone. I still remember our first night, Zulfiqar, when Jagdish was there and how everybody was just in the room talking, and I think we went on for hours. And from that moment on, it was extremely pleasant, and I have nothing but fond memories. But yeah, for someone who knew nothing about Sindhi and Pakistan itself, it was eye-opening, and it went very, very quickly, any tension that I had.
A quick word about Jagdish, who just Jagdish Ahuja and all his family and all his friends and all his people around him. So Joseph, who came and did the sound and did the photography with us on set, worked with me, with Daniel, on the main and most essential part that a film has to go through, which is the research, which was done in partnership with two people set in India, and Jagdish set in Sindh. So Jagdish was probably one of the first name we came across through the web, through websites, through Google, and through links that we could find. And we were astonished to see in how many fields this man was involved, and not just had something to say, but what he had to say was quite unique and quite different from anybody else. So he was involved in poetry, he was involved in politics, he was involved in history, he was involved with social work and helping the local community. So we really felt that Jagdish was somebody we should have been in touch with to better understand what Sindh is and to be able to reach Sindh and be welcomed by somebody in Sindh. So his support and the way he allowed us to feel at home and feel safe and feel able to ask and explore and go wherever our mind told us to go, it was just unique and invaluable, meaning that there is no a better situation that a filmmaker can find himself into. And you were there, Zulfiqar, sometimes, when we wanted to go and visit villages of fishermen along the coast, or we wanted to go and explore some villages in places that maybe some people were not so comfortable in taking us. We went there, you took us there, and the outcome was beautiful and was honest, and is what the film is today also. Is an insight of what Sindh is in 2020, which cannot be ignored. It's not just about the history, it's not just about the diaspora, it's not just about one segment, but it's about all of this part. And what Sindh is today, to me, as a filmmaker, trying to make a film which is contemporary, which is relevant today, not just for Sindhis. Because again, the goal of this film is trying to have a film that will attract the Sindhis as much as will attract my friends, my family, and an international audience who has never heard about Sindhis before, as we didn't before we started this journey. And I think that, again, if you are honest on showing what the situation is today, you then have that kind of film that will attract both sides of the spectrum. And I think you were asking before to Jason, I think he's the one that can tell us more in terms of how do you make those choices. He described himself before as the outsider that is the first viewer, which is 100% what he is. But
yes, it's very interesting because Jason has not visited over here, but he has been seeing more than us. In fact, we are living over here, so he has viewed almost every part of the scene where you have visited and filmed for the documentary. So, Jason, it's very interesting. Your comments.
Sure. What's the question? Just perspective on the footage, or
for me, Jason, has an interest for myself, and I hope his interest for everybody else is, we all know that it's a collective work. For me, I don't like calling a film by, because a film is our film. It's as much as my film as yours, Daniel, producers, people who are in the film. So it's a collective effort. And the effort that you had to put as a first viewer is making some key choices even before we confront between me and you of choosing this stays in, this goes out, this person is out. And I think that will help somebody who is not within this industry to understand how do you come to those choices, or how do you come to have a proposition to me and to the rest of the people in the team to suggest, let's go for this instead of that.
Sure, yeah. Well, and I mean, obviously, to some degree, you're looking at a process of filtration or distillation of working from a huge amount of material down to a much smaller amount of material in terms of duration. But really, even the idea of duration is a little bit of a misleading concept, because it's much more about the experience of the viewer, in terms of, in the same way as you guys went on a journey over a number of years, multiple journeys over a number of years, when you recollect that, you have a narrative, you have a story, an arc with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that is kind of what I see as my job, is trying to work out how can we create a narrative that encompasses the diversity of your story, but also focuses it enough that somebody who's never heard of any of the concepts before has a reasonable chance of understanding and drawing their own conclusions from it. And I think there's obviously a collaborative process between you and I, Mirko, of bouncing backwards and forwards and revising. And, that began with you giving me here 500-ish hours of footage that you'd gathered over 2 years at least. And then, but also saying to me, and these are the things that I find most interesting at the moment. And I then watching all of that, and then those are almost like the tips of the iceberg, and then drilling down into the underwater, masses of footage that there are beneath that, and coming back to you and saying, well, why do you find this character interesting? Or I find this character interesting because of this, and identifying various themes that recur and various points that different characters have in common. And then I often use this metaphor of, anybody who's ever played cards, playing cards, you get dealt your hand. And in a way, that's the analogy for the footage that you come back with. And then it's like, how do you navigate that to make the best selection? Because it's not just about one playing card is better than another playing card. It's about these 3 cards. If I can find a 4th, we'll make a full set. And that's what I need for the, so it's always about shuffling and reshuffling. And then, and almost always it's the point at which you're just about to lose your mind or throw the computer out the window or something like that, that you suddenly have a breakthrough and you say, if this character comes out of there and goes in here or is combined with that character, we have what we're trying to say, or a new perspective. So it's a long journey, but a very joyful one.
So we'd like to watch a little trailer about this movie right now, and then we'll come back and talk about their experiences more on scene.
Thank you.
Please.
Who is a Sindhi? This is a question I ask myself. In my dreams, the answer is always anyone who wants to be.
Mohenjo-daro is the largest Bronze Age urban settlement in the world.
Anyone who loves Sindh, and understands the principle that nothing will divide us, not even religion.
इहो सॼो मुंहिंजी नज़र में जेको बि सफ़र आहे असां रूह जो सफ़र कयो आहे
जहिड़ी कंहिंसां जी मरी हुई आहे हुई इहो मुंहिंजी हिकिड़ी कम जॾहिं जेको चरी थी पई हलां
It's a place that I've seen only in my dreams, and I would love to touch the soil of the sin.
The attacker appeared to have targeted the women's wing of the shrine and around
the Hindu is as much my brother, the Sikh is as much my brother as the Muslim, because we are children of the same land, of the same river, of the same earth.
If you want to know who you are, you have to go back to the history of your ancestors.
Excellent trailer. I think viewers must have enjoyed that. It suggests that Mirko, Daniel, and the crew of Still, they visited the scene more than many people living over here. So at the end, I would ask Mirko and then Daniel to say some words about their experiences, their views about the scene and traveling in the scene.
But the goal was, of course, if I then Daniel can add his own part, and also Jason by watching different part of scene through the footage. For me, it was important to again try to cover as much as we could. That's the reason why we went to scene twice. That's why we went to scene over 2 different years, because we were learning as we were going through Sindh. You know, Sindh is one of the biggest provinces of Pakistan. And
excuse me, interrupting. When you heard about the Soai and she embarked in this journey?
Say again,
Soai, yeah.
The question again, sorry, Zulfiqar. Suhai.
When did you heard about Soai and she embarked in this journey? Yeah.
Yes. I'll answer to that as I answered to your first question. So again,
Yeah,
the goal was to visit as many places, to be able to visit as many communities and understand in each corner of this province, Sindh, what was the situation and what was the way that people would live and what was the country was able to offer and presenting to us, both in terms of traditions, heritage, and struggle. Because let's not admit it. There is also struggle in Sindh, as there is everywhere in the world. But Sindh is going through difficult times, as many countries do. So the goal was learning through our own journey. So we started, of course, in Karachi, and I would say we drive as north. We went to Hyderabad, we went to Larkana, we went to Mohenjo-daro, we went all the way south to the coast and to the desert close to India. So we try to very much travel all across Sindh, and the feeling is composed by a multiple set of emotions. But the main one, and again, is not because you are in Sindh and we are making a film about Sindhis, but was the way we were welcomed by everybody. And that doesn't mean that people had something to offer us when they were welcoming us, but they still did their best to welcome us. So there is classes in Sindh as there is classes in India, and we spent time, we eat, we slept in families that were belonging to completely different set of classes within Sindh. And again, the approach was very much the same, trying to give us the best they had. Even if what they had was zero and was a floor with no pillows, with no blanket, they would try to make it as comfortable and as welcoming as they could. Same thing to people that had a beautiful house. So that was something that really impressed me, that is not a common way of welcoming people who you never met before. And again, let's not ignore it. Daniel is British. We were all a white crew, so people were also suspicious. You know, why are these people here? What's their goal? What they want to speak about? What they want to discover? So there was people with doubts about us, but overall, they've been always able to brush those doubts away the moments they heard us speaking, the moments they've seen us at work, and the moments they sat down with us. And something I never forget is, you know, again, because of the class system, the class division within the community, the way we would approach a driver or a cleaner or an interviewee was always exactly the same. One of the person we became the closest to was our own driver, which probably very rarely sat on the same table with different people from the community, but for us was just sitting next to us and would eat from our own plate, and we would share the beautiful moment with him. And that's something, again, it belongs to us as human beings because we are like this wherever we go, but we understood and we find out there was belonging to Sindhis. So I'm not saying would belong to any community of Pakistan and India, but at least was belonging to Sindhis. And I believe this is connected to the fact, as we mentioned before, that Sindhis are coming from Sufism, and Sufism is especially directed and projected to this approach to life and this approach with different humans, which they might not be thinking or believing in exactly the same God or approaching life in the same way that you approach life, but they consider you equal. So that was the more memorable memories I have of Sindh. Suhai, we met her. I met her in Italy after our first trip to Sindh because we were introduced to her mom. I really wanted to meet a woman which was involved with writing, with poetry and art. So I was introduced to the mother of Suhai. And during the interview, she mentioned, well, my daughter is in Italy. And I was like, your daughter is in Italy? I come from Italy. Can we try to meet? I mean, I'd be very interested to see who this woman is. So she called on Skype, so I didn't pick up, I believe, because maybe she was busy or something. But the moment I came back to Italy, which was 22nd of December, so just before Christmas, my goal was to meet Suhai. Not just because I never met Suhai, I never seen anything of Suhai before, except one exceptional film that she worked on as actress, which is called My Pure Land, which, by the way, was sent as Pakistan film to the Oscars a couple of years ago. So I watched the film before I met her, and the goal was to understanding how does a teenager, how does a young person, how does somebody in his 20s and his 30s manage to settle in a new country as Italy, and what are the issues that she's going through or not going through. So we met for the first time, and we spoke for a while on the Christmas days, if I remember correctly. And then 1 year after, we decided to go back to Sindh with her and try to embark this journey for a second time.
Nice. So Daniel, what was your experience? What about the food you found in Sindh?
Well,
food and other things that you experience, amazing things, funny things.
For me, the biggest, I hadn't really spent much time in India or Pakistan before that. It was actually my first time in India on this journey as well. There is, now I know that there is a tension between Hindu and Muslim, certainly here. When I got there, the most impactful thing for me was when we went through to the Shah Abdul Latif shrine. And for the first time ever, after seeing all of this history of what the two religions have been through, to actually see, and there was a shot actually in the trailer where you walk into the shrine, there's the bells. From that moment on, it didn't matter what faith you followed. You paid respect to both sides. So on one side, you'd have Jagdish, who is the Hindu, and then you'd have his friend who was the Muslim. But as they were going around to each of these different things, they're both sharing the same prayer. You just have one would be doing a different thing, closed arms and open arms. So for me, that was the most educational thing is that there are
That's
places.
That's about Odero Lal. It's not about Shah Abdurrahman, but it's about Odero Lal, where they're Hindu
Oh, beg your
and
pardon.
Muslim.
But sorry about it. But for me, that was the biggest, most impactful thing. It didn't matter about religion. It was the fact that you were going to a place with your brother, and
There's a mosque and temple beside each other. Yes, at Odero Lal.
yeah. In terms of the food, I've tried many types of Indian dishes now. I'm actually in Gujarat, so I have a lot of Gujarati dishes, and unfortunately, it doesn't compare to Sindhi food. I mean, Sindhi food is on another level.
Zulfiquar, that's something we need to arrange for Jason for the premiere of the film. He needs to try Sindhi food too.
Yes. How did you, Jason, translate and understand the feelings of the people and interpret those? And about the background music, because it is mostly Sindhi, and how did you select it?
Well, I mean, the answer with the music is quite a simple one. So I'll take that first. Is we have a composer that Mirko and I have both collaborated with in the past, who's in London actually, but he has connected with a Sindhi singer, their traditional singer, and they have been writing songs kind of bespoke for the film. I mean, during the initial edit, I was working with what we call reference tracks that have the right atmosphere, the right feeling, and the right kind of tempo to construct the edit, and then went to Peter, his name is, and he collaborated with this singer to write a bespoke score to really embody as much as possible the kind of Sindhi heritage and language within the film. So that's going to be a real treat. That's kind of well on its way to completion now. As far as your first question about dealing with translation issues, it's interesting that you mention it after the question about food, actually, because I always kind of, editing it to me has an element of art and an element of science. And it kind of compares in some ways to cooking, in the sense that you have predefined recipes and you have certain techniques that you do when you're cooking and you're combining ingredients. And it's important to understand how to do those techniques. But actually, ultimately, it all comes down to the taste, which is a very kind of primal human thing that actually exists below the level of any technique. So in terms of working with an interview, yes, I'm engaging part of my brain and reading subtitles in a rough translation of the original Sindhi. But ultimately, there's a reason why it's a film, and you're watching an image. It's not just a podcast. You're not just listening to words in the abstract. Or you're not reading text. You're actually engaging with an image and engaging with a representation of a human, which is a very emotional process. So there is a really important, and sometimes the biggest challenge, to be honest, is when you have certain sections of an interview that you say, we really need this information, this fact that this person states in the scene, but we really need this moment here because of the feeling that it brings and the human connection that it gives the audience to that person. And it's weighing up those two things, which are, we'd say kind of, apples and oranges. They're not really comparable in terms of what they bring to a film, but you need both to make a strong film. So, yeah.
Has there been anything different between other productions that you've worked on that stood out? I'm really curious to know about your editing process. Is anything different?
I would say it's always different. It's always different. Every director has a different style. Every subject has a different flavor and a texture. I think what this has in common with certainly, for example, Uspameni, the first film, one of Mirko's first documentaries that we collaborated on nearly 10 years ago, there was something in common in terms of the huge volume of material, but also a very
677 memories or something like that.
Sorry?
The first movie, 677 memories or something like that.
Remembrances, yeah, exactly. Yeah, remembrances of unfortunately of war crimes, essentially that happened in the Bosnian War. But yeah, just this very kind of human, instinctive approach to meeting a character and going really deep into that character. Mirko's mentioned a few of the characters that kind of lead us through Sind for certain sections. And so for me, editing that material, it's about listening to Mirko and listening to how he explains a character and how he explains their significance, but then also sometimes, accepting parts of that and also other times challenging parts of that and saying, here's something else that I see from the outside, or here's a relationship between two characters that maybe Mirko met them 2 years apart and I just see them in one afternoon and meet them both right in the footage. So it's always unique, I would say, and this definitely has been, and hopefully potentially just the beginning. We have one film now, but there may be a longer film, there may be a series of films, who knows for the future.
To that, I would add that during the editing process, more often is Mirko listening to Jason rather than Jason listening to Mirko.
So you have made your job easy, I think, because of your first experience during your first premium movie.
Yeah,
That's why you selected Jason, I think, to make your job easy.
I think it's very much related to who you are as a person and who you work with, meaning everybody in the team, the translation Suhai helped us immensely for months to do the translation. Daniel moved to my place to try to go all over the footage and syncing the camera, syncing the sound. So it's really about who you work with more than anything else. Yes.
And being an editor on that note, being an editor is you're partly a builder and you've got to know how to build things.
Sorry, cutting you in the middle. We are going for the question from the viewers, in fact. So it will be, they will be asking from you. Please.
Should we? There was a couple.
Jason, how tough has editing process been, because there's so much to cover and I believe you don't have the time in the world to show everything. So how do you skim the footage down? Yeah, Jason.
Sure. I mean, I feel like I've talked about that a little bit there. In terms of specific techniques, it's all about communication. It's all about understanding. Yes, I was mainly talking to Mirko, but I also had a few discussions with Daniel along the way. They both had different perspectives on the footage, and it's really about understanding their perspective on what footage represents. Using that, excuse me, I'm gonna have to stop. I've got, just a fire alarm. Where was I? Yeah, there is no easy solution. You have to watch, and in fact, you end up watching the same material again and again. Oftentimes you can rush over material and say, this part doesn't fit with what I'm doing now, but it's when you know that there's something in what this character says in this 10 minutes that is really key, but which part is it and how do you combine it? And it's again, as I said, with the metaphor of the hand of cards, one piece of footage doesn't represent one thing. It represents, and especially when the interviews have been done in such an in-depth way, with all this awareness of context, everybody is talking about different layers of experience and culture and history. And it's about resonances between different pieces of footage, and finding that, hopefully, that kind of harmonic resonance.
Yeah. So next question, please. It's from Yasin Junejo. Which thing in the scene attracted you guys the most in landscape and architecture in any place? Food or people or anything like that?
Can you pop the question up again? I'm very slow in reading.
It's from Yasin Junejo. It's about food, place, or anything like that. Especially in the Brooks being editor, I want to. What was the first reaction when you saw faces of the people belong to Sindh? Because you have never met Sindhi people, typical Sindhi people living over here.
I'll let Daniel and Mirko answer first.
Yeah,
Daniel and then Jason.
I'm not really sure how to start the answer. There was just too much. I did actually see something, Yasin, that you put on another question. So I'm going to cheat myself out of this one and pass that to Mirko. But you asked me what words, if any, that I remembered, and there is one saying that always I will never forget is Sadang Gada. So that I hope that answers your question, because it actually means for all the non-Sindhi speaking people that you're forever together. It doesn't matter where you are, whatever you do, you're always in my mind. So I hope that answers your other question. I'll chuck the question back to you, Mirko, because I'm not sure how much, because I'll be talking forever.
So what was your reaction, Jason, when you saw the Sindhi people in the footage?
I'll answer to Yasin, and Yasin, Yasin is somebody who helped us a lot during the production too. Like every he was our fixer during the second time we went to Sindh. So he spent a fair amount of time with us, and he could understand how we approach things, how we speak to people, and in a way, probably he must be laughing now if he's watching this, how demanding we were. So whenever he would tell us, please, let's try not to do that, that was the moment we really wanted to do that. So next time we come to Yasin, just tell us, yes, of course you can do that, so that we will not push you to do unreasonable things. But the feeling of seeing a face of Sindhi people, I go back to Manzoor. Manzoor he was our driver. He became a very close friend to me and Daniel because he's an incredible human being that welcomed us in his own home. He is a very humble man. He struggled to get any kind of jobs he can as a driver. So we're talking of somebody who is really struggling to make the day and to have food for his own kids and his own family. But he invited us to his own home, and we went happily. We slept at his own home. We stayed with him for a couple of days. And I remember the moment, which, by the way, me and Jason edited a couple of days ago, is these so many kids, like I would say maybe around 50 or 60 or 70 kids, they suddenly were all around me and Daniel. And we started to film each of them a very close-up shot of these very incredible, honest and pure faces, which they seemed from all around the world. So you had some kids which they were extremely dark. Some they seemed coming from Mongolia or China. Some others seemed coming from Europe. Some others seemed Scandinavian. And they were all there within this group of Sindhi people and community. So the purity, the diversity, and the honesty of what a face of a kid can say, I think goes beyond anything else. And that's what I keep in my mind when I think of a Sindhi face, a Sindhi expression.
Actually,
yes.
Jason, please. When you saw the Sindhi people in footage, what was your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I feel very fortunate because it's beautiful footage to edit with. It's really nice to be looking at these images. Like it's hard to add on to what Mirko said, but yeah, I mean, this kid's a lovely kid. But yeah, of course, a lot of cinematography is the work of Daniel and Mirko and the way that they use the cameras, but it does help when you have so many beautiful faces to point the camera at as well, right? It's and as Mirko says, not just beautiful, but really diverse in a way that you wouldn't expect from. But it's to do with the location of the country within the world and within the history of the world as well. It's been on so many significant routes of movements of people over thousands of years. Yeah. Stunning. It definitely makes me very curious. I think the nearest I've been to India once or twice, but I've spent quite a bit of time in Afghanistan, which is obviously a very different country, but it's similar in that way, in that there's this hugely diverse ethnic makeup of the people, and I'd really love to go and spend some time in Sindh for sure.
There's not much time left. Otherwise, we had asked why Mirko gone to Afghanistan for the Sindh documentary on Sindh as well. That's very interesting story, but maybe next time we'll hear from you. Moving to next question, please. It's from Ishtiaq Qureshi. You would have studied and visited various ancient cultures. What inspired you to work on Sindh and its heritage? Second question, how do you think the work of conservation of archaeological sites have been done in Sindh in comparison to the rest of the world?
Fantastic question. Fantastic question. Daniel, I mean, you can go ahead. Then,
okay,
yeah.
Please.
This is for his second question. I think that unfortunately, due to the actions of certain nations, the archaeological digs have kind of been limited somewhat. And I actually think there's a hell of a lot more to discover if you take Mohenjo-daro, for example, it's a city built on a city, which I'm sure is probably built on another city. But 30 years ago, stuff happened and it was told to stop. So I'm pretty sure that there's more to find. One of the things that I do feel privileged is seeing these sites, such as Mohenjo-daro, such as the Sun Gate, even being on the first, the plaque said the first ever mosque in that area of the world. I mean, it was a privilege to be part of it.
In Asia.
Yeah. So it's a very important place for history, and I think because of outside influences, it's been very limited. And I think in the next however many years, there's just going to be a release of freedom, because I think it's getting a lot more freedom now to be able to start digging up the past, start looking into the history. So I'm very excited myself.
Mirko, your response, please.
Yeah, to add to that is that we mentioned Mohenjo-daro, we haven't mentioned Harappa, we haven't mentioned Ronikot, we haven't mentioned many other places we went to, but each of them, they are just so powerful when you look at them, when you are there, when you walk into the ruins, when you walk in between walls and you think that 5,000 years ago in that city that was home for thousands and thousands and thousands of people, they already had running water, they had toilets, they had system that arrived into the Western world 2,000 or 3,000 years later. So the amount of heritage and the amount of importance that sin has is unlimited. What Sindhis can do within an already difficult economy since the last few decades is limited. What an international community can do to support them, as, let's say, I'm an archaeologist and I want to come and contribute to the place, is limited, because it's really hard to come and work in Pakistan today. So there is, as Daniel said, a huge amount of work that should be done. And I hope that project as our, and as many other projects in terms of writing, photography, pieces from journalism, any kind of work that highlight the importance of this location and this place, I hope will help the community to preserve this site. Because once they are gone, again, they are gone. Once you forget them, you'll never get back to what they can reveal to you in terms of history that we all don't know about yet. So I think this is also a reason why, internally as a team, we decided and we discussed that as soon as we finish our feature film for hopefully television and online platform and DVDs and cinemas, which, by the way, we are working on a quite amazing cinema release across 10 countries simultaneously. So it's really hard to have a film screened at the cinema these days if you're not called Steven Spielberg, or you have Steven Spielberg to produce your film. It's extremely hard to have a documentary in a cinema. What we are trying to achieve is to have a release in 10 different countries around the world at the same time at the cinema. And we are working on a series still called Still Standing of 4-part 30 minutes, which each segment will be fully dedicated to one of these key topics that we believe the community can speak about. Because as Jason said before, you have 53 minutes, you have 78 minutes, you have 80 minutes. You can't squeeze everything you wish into that one film. You have to make hard choices. You have to make people unhappy. Again, some people, they will watch it and they will think, but where am I? I thought you were thinking about me as a key character for this film. And probably I still do. We still do. But that's what you have. And you have to try to do the best you can to have a strong film for people that want to learn something they haven't never heard about before. So we're trying to go for a big release, and we're trying to have a series that hopefully will cover everything which is uncovered by this length of the film.
In the end, after question, we'll ask the post-release your plans as your lady expressed over here. But first, let us finish the question section here. Next question, please. Yeah. This again from Hussein Mirani. If you could visit any of these places again, which would we like to explore more?
Daniel can answer for both of us, and I think this will be a surprise for Jason too, which is not aware yet about this. So the next visit is. You are muted, Daniel.
I will go there without my camera just to meet all my, the people that I've met. But for me,
you'd like to explore more?
For me, I'd like to go back to the Sun Gate, because when we were there, whether it's true or not, I'm not sure, but the Sun Gate is a huge wall. You can, I think it was bigger than the Great Wall of China, but it went off into the desert and across into the mountains. And the people that we were with, our guides, if I remember rightly, they said that no one.
Rani Court.
Yes, and they haven't been to the very end because it started to degrade and decay over time. But I'd love to just get enough food and water and just track up and just see where it is, because someone had to build it. Someone had to build it for a reason. But it's such an old, Sindh is such an old country that they've forgotten what it was built for. So I'd love to see what's at the other side. They've been restoring it and digging it up over 10, 15 years or however long it was. And there's still rooms that they're finding along the wall where someone would have been waiting, guarding for what, we don't know. But, they were finding all different kinds of bits. I'd love to just do a hike and visit it, see what's there.
And I think, Zulfiqar, just to connect to this and what Daniel said, is all of the unknown which really inspire us to do what we are doing. Even with Jason, we were asking ourselves, how universal is the film we are trying to make? Is it just a film about Sindhis? And to be really honest, to me, it's not. To me, it's through the Sindhi and through the history and the struggle and the future of Sindhi, we are talking about a very universal topic. A topic that can be applied to countries again and again and again. Is a topic that the whole world is going through. We are in a time where we are building walls, we're building division. We are thinking to be best than compared to our neighbor. We have more rights. He has less right because he belongs to a different sect. And what this community has proposed to us is that against all this struggle, you were one community. You were be able to be whoever you wanted to choose to be, and you were accepted. And this is still happening in Sindh today. Because again, better than anybody else, we were going around with Hindu and Muslims at the same time. Did never anything happen, and there was no tension. So that's, to me, why it's so important to make the film and to use this topic as a universal topic.
Yes, I know it's more not only a documentary about the Sindhi, it's rather a mission. It's not a film. I know personally to you, and we've been talking during your visit. It's a mission, in fact, as you have explained your views. So we'll go for the last question, and then we'll ask you for the plans for the release and after release. Last question, please. It's again from Yasin Junejo, Mirko and Daniel. You guys travel many areas without taking any breath or rest. So when you guys finish your film, how many days you spare for rest? And during this, I add to Yasin that Mirko has got very severe pain in his back. In fact, even then he could not spare some time, and I don't know how did he struggle with that pain. So please, your experiences.
The pain was just the worst back pain I had in my life. So I practically couldn't walk the first day I arrived in Sindh. So, I had bandages with ice on my back to try to keep going. And then I remember I was in the house with Daniel, and I asked him, he told me, I've seen one of my friends that actually became paralyzed or something as such.
No, it was my dad. He had a slip disc, and he couldn't move for months.
The question was, shall I push beyond filming so hopefully the pain goes away, or shall I just stay in bed for 2 weeks? And we kept going working. So yes, we kept going filming, and the pain has gone. To answer to the question about after we finish the film, how many days of rest we will have, I wish that we will be able to work out a plan to be able to come, all of us, all of the crew, to Sindh as soon as we have a finished film and be able to watch it with everybody who was involved. in the film. It's a big mission. There is people scattered all around Sindh, so it's not going to be the easiest things to do, both financially and logistically, but it's one of my biggest dreams, because again, the film is not for me, it's not for Daniel, it's not for Jason. The film is for everybody, and I think the people who should see it first and express their feeling is those people who believed in us during the time we were filming. So I would say a couple of weeks / between 2 to 4 weeks in Sindh as soon as we can, COVID allowing.
So next time, don't forget to bring Jason as well to feel the Sindh, in fact, feel the Sindh and Sindhi people.
We won't forget, for sure.
I certainly won't object to that. Yeah.
So now we'll go to the few comments. We'll watch the comments to be displayed on our screen. From the Raz, loved the trailer.
Thank you, Raz.
Next, please.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Miss you, Mirko. Temur, it is from the Temur Nazir. Miss you, Mirko.
Hey.
And from Gulasan, very nice. Priyanka Hira, looking forward to the film. And Raz from Raz again, the music was soothing. Gulasan, thank you. Raz. Nothing, last time, love you, Mirko and Daniel. Yeah, lots of love. But Daniel and Mirko, you are a lovely person, both of you, and even Joseph, every team. Yes, we love you. Raz, again, diversity is the beauty of Sindh. Yes, that is the question, but maybe we'll have more sessions on that before the release of the movie.
We will.
And we'll talk about more and more about the Sindh. Then Taskin Zera, when the film will be released and on which platform it will be released. Mirko, please.
Yeah. I mean, everything is unpredictable with film, so take my words with care in a way. But the goal is to have a finished film by mid-February. This is a film which we will try to present to the industry to see if the industry is interested, because again, platform, I would say, is the last segment of the life of a film. Our goal, as I said before, is to have it screened in cinemas in 10 countries simultaneously first, then to have it on film festival, because a film, especially the longer version of the film, will hopefully travel to film festival for a period between 4 to 6 months, and then broadcasters. So platform is really the last piece of the puzzle, which probably will happen next summer. But to give you an overall date, I would say spring 2021 is when people could potentially start to see the film.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the participants, and especially switching to the Sindhi again. मां सभिनी सिंधी व्यूअर्स खे तमामु घणो पंहिंजो शुक्रियो अदा कंदुमि प्रोग्राम में ॾिठो ऐं असां होपफुली उन्हनि लाइक कयो हूंदो, उन्हनि खे ॻाल्हियूं वणियूं हूंदियूं, मीरको, डैनियल ऐं जेसन जूं, ऐं असां इंतज़ारु कंदासीं त कॾहिं इहा फिल्म अचे पई. So again, thank you, participants. Maybe we'll have a lot of sessions on this movie and about Sindh and Sindhi people after this session as well. So thank you, everyone, participants and viewers, everyone.
Hello to everyone.
Thank you.
Hello to everyone at Sindhavat, especially Tamar. How are you doing? There's my shout out. I did my shout out.